basically, things had gone very well on the trip. There had been really nothing out of the ordinary. The President had received a very good reception in Fort Worth. He came to Dallas. He had a very good reception at Love Field. The plan was, it had been published in the newspaper, what the motorcade route would be. He would take a parade route through downtown Dallas, and at a certain point, which was a railroad overpass just past what we now know to be the Texas School Book Depository, the motorcade was basically to end there. That is, the parade part of it would end there. The motorcade would pick up speed and go to the Trade Mart, some distance from there, where President Kennedy was to make his central speech in Dallas. And we had set up, at CBS, we'd set up along the parade route a few places where, because we were dealing with film, not videotape, where the people who were in the White House press corps contingent, photographer, correspondent, White House correspondent, but the photographer who was on a truck bed sort of thing to film the motorcade, put people at pre-designated places where he could drop the film in a yellow shipping bag, which has CBS News on the side of it. They're old grapefruit bags. We still use them. And, quickly, the grapefruit bag, the person at the designated spot, throw the grapefruit bag off to that person, and designating that person could run it back to KRLD where I was, and we would begin assembling the piece for that day's broadcast. I was not to do the piece. The White House correspondent would probably do the piece. But we had set up these drop points for the film along the way, and everything was going really well. And from the beginning, we did not have a drop point at where the overpass was. The President's motorcade was take a left in front of the School Book Depository, go down a little bit underneath the railroad underpass, and things were going very well. And quite frankly, I kind of wanted to see what was going on, and I said, well, I'll go to that overpass. I leave here KRLD and go to just beyond the overpass, which is where that'd be the last slow point the motorcade was going. And I was there. I didn't hear any shots. I didn't know that anything had gone wrong. It was a fairly big crowd over in front of the School Book Depository, but there were very, very few people where I was beyond the tunnel. Underpass, it really wasn't a tunnel. But I thought I saw the President's limousine really speed past going lickety-split, but it happened so quickly I wasn't even sure it was his limousine. I kind of said, well, was that the President's limousine? But I wasn't sure. And it was confused, but what I remember thinking is the rest of the motorcade is not coming, which indeed it didn't. It stopped. It was the camera car and the pool car and other things I do would be in the motorcade didn't come through the overpass. This all happened very, very quickly. And I also thought, I wasn't certain, but I thought that the President's limousine, if that's what it was, I was saying, if it was a President's limousine, I can't, was it? And then I thought it went in a direction that I wasn't sure was the direction of the Trade Mart. I thought, well, that's not a correct thing. So all this happened very quickly. So I, went running backward to see, well, what, I thought, well, there's some reason the motorcade's been held up. And, beyond that overpass was chaos. Huge, people on the ground screaming, pointing, fathers covering their children. It was very clear, again, seconds, I'm tempted to say, nanoseconds, something was wrong. I had no idea what it was. But clearly something was wrong. And the only thing I thought is, boy, whatever's happened here, I better get back to KRLD. Which is not far away. It was a little distance, but not far away. And so I bolted. I just took one look and said, well, something not good has happened here. And so, boom, I was going to KRLD. And by the time I got to KRLD, that there was some rather confusing traffic on. They had police radios, sheriff's radios, the usual newsroom contention of things, but that the Merriman Smith of United Press had filed pretty quickly a short bulletin from Dallas. I can't quote it directly, but journalism schools could study it, because he basically said the president's been shot, wounded, may seriously or fatally. Anyway, by that time, it was obvious that somebody had shot at the president, but I still wasn't certain that the president had been hit, much less that he'd been fatally hit. The time I got to the newsroom, I don't remember specifically. It wasn't long in that UPI thing coming, but the time I got back to the newsroom, it was pretty clear, and I think it was based on the Merriman Smith thing. I can't be positive of that, but that the president had been shot at. But whether, one thing, the shots had fired, but whether he had actually been hit, much less been fatally hit, Merriman Smith suggested it in either his first bolt or the second. But it was obvious he'd been shot at. The rest of it was nobody knew. Things really happened, one thing tumbled behind the other very, very quickly. First it's the president's been shot at, if you pardon that syntax. Shot at and hit. Are we sure he's been hit? Yes, he was hit. Holy smoke, where is he? He's taken to Parkland Hospital. All of this, flowed in very quickly. And everybody was trying to make telephone calls, listen to the police radio, turn up the police radios and the sheriff's radios. They didn't have much in the beginning, to tell you the truth, because they were confused about what was happening, and with good reason. We were trying to find out what was going on. And Eddie Barker at the Trademark, I did not speak to him. I don't remember speaking to him. I do remember speaking to him the other day, but that he was at the Trademark where they were waiting for the president to come make his speech. And Eddie, so it was relayed to me in New York, that Eddie Barker has heard that the president may be dead, and he thinks his source is pretty good. And that we were trying to confirm where the president was, what condition he was in. We got through to the hospital. Eventually we're told at the hospital, incredibly so, by people who were in a state of shock, if you will, not only that the president wounded, but that he was dead. I'm on the phone with New York, holding for radio and television, trying at the same time to make phone calls, great confusion about things. But there came a point, I don't remember now exactly how many minutes it was, but sometime before, I have to be careful about the time here because I get confused about Central Time and Eastern Time. But I believe Central Time, the shots were at or about 12:30, 12:31. And well before 1 o'clock, I was on the phone with radio. Here's what we had. Barker at the Trademark said he had heard somebody was dead. Well, we didn't have it confirmed, because if we had, Eddie would have had it on his own radio station, and we'd have had it everywhere. But Walter Cronkite had passed that along. Eddie Barker heard, that I had talked to the hospital, talked to a doctor, talked to a priest, talked to another priest, that we had, that's what we had. We had people at the Trademark who, I know now who it was, but and Eddie knows who it was. I think he's spoken to it, but it was not just a passerby, somebody connected I with the hospital. It passed along to him. He thought the president was dead. We talked to people at the hospital and said the president was dead. I was a doctor, priest. So I'd covered the police beat in Houston for a long time. And I said to myself, if I'm working the police beat in Houston, what we got here is a dead man. But this is the president of the United States. So in talking to radio in New York, I think it was the late Mark Dank, I was going through this. And I said, I think what we have here is a dead man. I think the president is dead. And he said, well, what do you got? And I ticked off what we had. He turned to somebody, I can't remember who it was. I think it may have been Dallas Townsend, who was a well-known CBS radio correspondent by that time. And the next thing I know, Townsend, and I'm pretty sure it was Dallas Townsend, they were announcing that the president was dead, and they played the Star-Spangled Banner. This is on the radio. The situation in New York, as I understand it, pretty sure I'm right about this, that while radio and television were close by, that they were not cheek by jowl. And the radio editor made a decision on the spot. It turned out to be the right decision, that given what we had, that they announced the president was dead and played the Star-Spangled Banner. By the time it got to television, I gather, in fact I don't gather, I know that there was some second thoughts about it. Well, yes, we may know he's dead, but we better wait for the official announcement. I didn't make that decision. That others made it. I think it was a combination of, I'm not sure, Ernie Leiser I mentioned earlier was there. But at any rate, the decision was, well, we don't doubt it, was my understanding, but we're not going to announce it until there's an official announcement. And with, I don't know, 18, 20 minutes later, sometime just after 1 o'clock Central Time, check me on those times, that the official announcement was made. But I didn't have any doubt in my mind that the president was dead. At the time I was thinking, well, nobody said we're going to play the Star-Spangled Banner and announce it. But I had told them what we had, and told them in uncertain times, I'm not putting it off on anybody else, that they had asked me, and I told them. I told them what we had, and I told him that he was dead.